Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the webinar, and thank you for joining us today. Really interesting topic, of course, that the clock is ticking, and so a lot of us have a lot of interest in what's happening with Google Analytics. My name is Molly Kelly. I'm president of digital with Zuri Group, and happy to have you here, and I'm glad you got our emails. I want to introduce to you Joe Hallisey. He is a senior consultant with Zuri Group, and he leads our digital marketing team here at Zuri. Joe has over 12 years of marketing, fundraising, and digital strategy experience. He's certified in Google Analytics 4, also certified in Engaging Networks and HubSpot CRM. In addition to traditional digital strategy, Joe also has experience with advertising, media buys, marketing planning, as well as many, many other things. I just want to hand it off to Joe. He's going to fill you in today. Joe, take it away.
Thanks, Molly. That was a great introduction. So let's get to the meat of what we're talking about here, all about GA4 and this big transition that's coming up. How about we start things off with a quick poll to see where everyone is in this journey? All right, we'll give it a couple seconds for everyone to do the poll, and then we'll take a look at where we're at. All right, 20% say they are somewhat prepared, not very prepared, 70% say somewhat, and 10% say very prepared. Okay, so we got a little bit across the board. It's great that everyone's here, and I'm looking forward to talking with everyone about this. So let's get into it now. So what's the big deal with Google Analytics 4? So this might be already something that you know, but if not, so Google released this new version of Analytics in 2020. They've had the current version of Universal Analytics for quite a few years before that, and it's been kind of the stable industry standard. And because of all of these big changes to tracking methodology, privacy concerns, the way the internet works in general, Google decided that they're going to try something completely new and come out with this new version of Google Analytics. So they announced it in 2020, and through the last few years, they've given everyone time to adjust, and now they're going to stop processing data on Universal Analytics July 1st of this year. So what does that mean? Well, it means kind of a big change for everyone. Here's a little bit of the backstory just to fill everyone in. So Google has been this top performer in the market for analytics for quite a few years. They started in 2005 by buying this company called Urchin On Demand. You might recognize the U in there, the Urchin, with UTM parameters. So the U in UTMs is Urchin. So they were the one that Google really tried to bought up so they could have better tracking for their advertising platforms. And then throughout the years, they've come out with a couple different versions of analytics, Google Analytics Premium, what they called in 2007, then Universal Analytics, or GA3 in 2011, and then finally Google Analytics 4 is what they've rolled out with in 2020. So what are the key changes that are coming about with Google Analytics 4? So many of them focus on data privacy. As you might have heard, there's lots of new privacy regulations, and it's not really new, but GDPR and EU has played a big factor with Google's needs to change their analytics platform. So if you are an end user and you're in the EU, all your data is now processed on EU-based servers. That is a compliance requirement for GDPR. IP addresses are no longer stored, so it's more privacy focused in that way. Data sharing is another thing that Google has made optional, specifically about being able to take that GA4 data and linking it to other Google services. So your data could remain private based on your web browsing history versus what you're doing in other places like your Gmail or any other Google services that you use. So if your company is very privacy focused, that is an optional thing that you can link now. And then there's more granularity and collection of that geo and device-based data. And so they're able to kind of make sure that places that don't want that level of tracking, they can just do aggregate data there. There's also this option for cookie-based tracking as well. So there's both cookie and cookieless-based tracking in GA4. The use of cookies is focused on using the first party cookies rather than third party. And then if you want to go with the cookieless tracking, it relies on machine learning and data modeling. I don't have a lot of information yet on how this cookieless tracking performs compared to the cookies, but I think that we're going to see a lot more studies once everyone kind of fully shifts on to GA4 about that. And I want to just give everyone a quick chance to screenshot this QR code. So this is what you'll get with that QR code. It's just a comparison between GA4 and GA3 or Universal. But some of those big changes are about those key performance indicators. One of the things that's changing is the elimination of total unique visitors metric. So because of all these tracking changes and privacy models, that's not really a metric that Google can really uphold going forward. They're also changing from bounce rate to engagement rate. So this is also throwing a wrench into those standard reports that everyone's been looking at for so many years. And it's a different way to define it. And then also one kind of big difference in terms of reporting is GA4 can count multiple conversions in a session. So you could have lots of micro conversions for different things and your purchase conversion that can be counted versus a once per session conversion in Universal Analytics. All right, so what do we need to do to get ourselves ready for this transition? Here's the kind of 4 things that we talk about at Zuri Group when we're talking to clients about this. The first one is to inventory your accounts. There might have been lots of movement within your organization. Some people might own one Google account, others might own another. Your marketing team or outside vendor might own your advertising accounts, your Google Ads accounts. It's good to build yourself a list of all of the sites that you're tracking, all of the different platforms, and which are linked to which account. Having this kind of list is a good place to help you understand what you're going to need to transfer over. Maybe some things could be deleted or done away with, and others you might be surprised that you have some data there, and you might need to take a second thought at that. Second thing to do is just think about all the information that you have going on within your Google Analytics accounts. So we call this a knowledge check. So what we've seen with a lot of clients is they'll have lots of different properties. So the properties may be your websites, and then lots of different views. These are different filtered Google Analytics accounts that show, say, maybe only internal traffic or traffic to these specific domains or other things. So it's good to make a note of all those different types of properties and views and data streams to make sure that you know what types of information you need to look at, what are the top priorities, what are just some of the ones that you used for a random report every once in a while, and then what could be done away with. Because you'll want to have all those available for you when you start setting up your GA4 properties and setting up your reports and filters within GA4. It's important to know, what you need to bring on from Universal Analytics. The third thing is looking at your GA3 goals, and actually I should say GA3 goals and events. So one of the big radical changes with GA4 is they've done away with this goals system, and events are now something that everything in Google Analytics 4 is an event. So page views are an event, scrolls are an event, purchases are an event. So it's yet another different mindset that everyone will have to get into as they start working on their GA4 accounts. So here's where it's good to start talking with your teams about what are your conversion events, what are important to you. So in Universal Analytics, you might have had lots of different goals for different email sign-up forms, or you wanted people to visit different pages and you wanted to report on that at some point. Looking through all those goals that you might have had is good to understand what really matters to you. And what we're recommending right now is start with less and continue building onto it. Do you really need to know exactly how many people sign up for your email list in the first month? Maybe not. You could probably get that from a different system. But if you're really looking to focus on purchase conversion tracking or some other metric, let's start with that main one and build on from there. And then the last one is reporting. There's definitely going to be some differences in reporting with GA4 and how these are built. So take a look at the reports that you need, or you look at it quite often. Do you have custom reports that need to be rebuilt? Are there parts of Universal Analytics, say the source medium traffic reports? Are those things that you look at quite often? Then let's write those down and make sure that we know where to look for that on GA4. All right, so once you have those 4 things ready to go, you've got your inventory, you know your data streams, your reporting, your conversions. Now it's time to start that migration. And this is where probably some people have a little bit of stress because they go into their Universal Analytics account and they see this giant countdown timer. You must switch before July 1st to keep saving your data. There's 3 different options for you, from easiest to least. So the first one, if you don't do anything, Google will set up a GA4 property for you. It basically copies over all of your goals into events. It puts it in kind of the same property for you under the same account, gets you kind of set up. So you're fine there. The next one is to use the GA4 Setup Assistant. This one helps you kind of in a wizard-like way to go through some steps to make sure that you understand how things are going. So in fact, actually, combining 1 and 2 is what a lot of people have been doing. So they'll have Google set it up first, and then they'll go through and they'll check the boxes. So within the Setup Assistant, it helps you understand, all right, where are we collecting data from? What are our conversions? Who are our users that need access? Any special things, they'll tell you if data is tracking correctly, just to give you some peace of mind that you set up the scripts correctly. So it's a pretty good tool, I think, and they've perfected this over the last 3 years to be able to help people get set up. And then the final one is to start from scratch. If you have a really messy account, if you have a ton of different things going on within your analytics accounts, this is somewhere where you might want to think, okay, like let's just start from the beginning. All this other data is junky, might not be accurate, or we've done a poor job of it. Let's get started on the right foot. So that could be an option for you. It takes the most time. It's not incredibly arduous to do because the simplicity that Google has made in terms of at least setting things up, but it will take you more time. All right, here's another QR code for you to save. This one is Google's official release notes on GA4. So they are still hard at work on rolling out more features, and I expect that this will be a continuous thing that they'll be doing over the lifespan of this product. They, as you might have heard, they kind of came out of the starting gates on this with not as many features in parity with Universal Analytics, and they've been playing catch up since they announced it in 2020. And they're getting closer to parity in terms of the types of features they're offering, but it's not there yet. So this is a place to kind of see that progress and look at the different things, the different features that they're adding. All right, some other things to consider are custom reports and explorations. So I mentioned earlier that there's some big reporting differences with Google Analytics 4. The first one is custom reports. So custom reports is kind of similar to how you can do custom reporting within Universal Analytics. All dimensions and metrics are supported, but the one thing is it uses aggregated tables. So what does that mean? So because of all these privacy issues, they have basically, once you hit a certain limit on the number of events, they start aggregating that data for you. Or if you have a lot of custom dimensions on there that aren't set up correctly, it'll start aggregating that information up. And so you might not get all of the exact information you're looking for, every single channel or every single source that you've created. You'll get maybe your top 10, and then it'll say like others are not set. So this is a great way to get kind of the top line things that you're looking for, but don't expect to drill down into a source and a medium, for example, that only one person used, because they're not capturing that for you. The other way to look at things is called explorations. So this is more of a data visualization tool where reports is a little bit more of a table-based focus in some ways. So explorations allow you to take some dimensions and metrics. Most of them are available, but some are not supported. And this does give you that account account data and user data limit here. So this is where you can deep dive into some of those events to get a little bit more information. Both are a bit tricky to use, at least to start out with. Right now, I find it a bit tricky, but we have some coworkers at Surrey Group have really been doing a lot of work in the report space and who absolutely love it. But for the regular user, it might feel a little overwhelming at first. So there's a lot of great tutorials out there on the internet and on YouTube, and people are continuing to build custom reports that are shareable to the outside world. So those are good things. Plus, Google also is adding more reports that they've put into the hopper as well. So do they have nonprofit-based reports? I don't think so at this point, but I think that you can kind of take some of the businessy for-profit ones and make it into your own. I'm gonna take a quick drink here so I don't lose my voice. All right. Sharing reports and explorations is another thing to think about as you're making this transition. So this is one thing that's kind of driving me nuts a bit with GA4. As a pro, the custom reports can be added to any dashboard screen within the app. You can create lots of different dashboards for different things. So, you know, your marketing team could have their own dashboard. Your CEO and executives could have their own dashboard. You, as the digital marketing or fundraiser, could have your own dashboard. Your web developers can have their own one. So you're not all trying to look at one giant report or one giant place through all the info. And that's shareable with them. The downside is on the exploration side, because it has that user level data, they're all defaulted to private. You have to explicitly share it with someone, and then it's only read-only at that point. So it's a little tough and frustrating, especially if you're working with a colleague to make a report in a specific way for later through explorations. And it ends up with, you know, in our experience, we just keep duplicating and cloning, and it gets a little bit messy. So I'm hoping that Google will come up with a better way to do that in the future. Changes to event tracking. So as a recap, events in GA4 are not just specific, conversions. Events could be anything, but there are a few that you can set up on your own. There's some standard ones that come prepackaged, like page views and scrolls and a few other things. But and then there's some ones that have a lot of documentation, like purchase conversions, email signups, logins. Those are all documented really well. But if you're looking for something that's not standard, you're going to have to do a little bit of work and have a little bit of technical knowledge to be able to set that up in terms of how that data can get into GA4. The other thing that's a little bit of a downside right now with tracking is there are only 3 acquisition reports right now that they're giving you out of the box. Yeah, you can make more through reports and exploration, but for what I'm understanding is probably some of you aren't frequent users of this tool. Creating those reports is going to be tough. So I want to set the stage to say that you might feel like something might be missing right away with that. And it might be coming, or you might have to dig in and do a custom report to make that happen. And then if you're using those UA goals and events, it's time to rethink that tracking strategy. We talked about that at the beginning of this webinar, where taking a look at all those different goals and events within UA is something that you should do prior to that migration, so you know which ones you're going to have to set up and which ones you can kind of toss out the window. And then I just put on here as an example. This is just what a standard data layer might look like on your website backend for, say, a donation conversion. Even though it's called purchase here, we've been setting up donations as purchases because it works better with what's built into GA4, and that's just a aside. Data retention. So this is a big surprise to everyone in terms of, we all want to get as much data in, and we like to save our data. Maybe we don't use it, but we still want to feel like we have a record of something just in case. And the big difference with GA4 is for user and event level data, including those conversions, they're only retaining it for a maximum of 14 months within GA4. So what does that mean? So from the date and time of that user coming onto your site and making a donation, you can see that data up until 14 months plus 1 day and 1 second. And at that point, they'll wipe that out from your GA4 account. So they're trying to preserve that privacy of the users there. So if you're looking to save that data for future historical purposes, like you're looking at multi-year data that you want to sort through, the best way that Google's recommending, and we are too, is to use Google BigQuery. It's a data warehouse product that Google has made that runs off their cloud. You can link it automatically to GA4. So once you set it, it's kind of a forget it thing. And it does cost some money. There is a free tier though, and there's some nonprofit discounts. But if you are a very large organization with lots of visitors and lots of complex events, expect to be paying, maybe $10 a month for that, to be increased over time, because the more data you have in there, the more it'll cost. But the cool thing with BigQuery and other data warehouse services is because it's just a warehouse, you can use it to bring in data from all sorts of sources. So offline sources like offline GIFs, or you can use it to remove incorrect data that had been that carried over from GA4. So say you did a ton of test transactions and it kind of is messing up with your reporting within GA4, you could actually take that out of Google BigQuery, just delete it, and so you have a better version of your data that you can report off of in the future. And then if maybe your nonprofit is more of a Microsoft house, or you're an Amazon user, there are different platforms out there that have data warehouses, and it is possible to set up this with the reporting API. So if your IT department absolutely hates Google or something, there's other ways to go with it. It's a bit more complicated, but it works. Setting up filters for internal and dev traffic. So you might have done this in Universal Analytics, where you got all your office's IP addresses and your devs, and you say, all right, we don't want to capture any of this traffic. That isn't something that's possible in the same way. There are some ways that you can do it, but it all depends on using like query parameters on your on the URLs that you're using to test. So there are some permanent filters, one for developer traffic and one for internal traffic, that you can set up, but it's pretty limited right now. On the flip side, though, there are more reporting filters than there were in Universal Analytics. So this is where you can do some slicing and dicing for customization within your reports. So you can take a look at people who donated to you, but not from these countries, or not from this area, or using this type of device. And the cool thing here is that it's retroactive to past data that you have in Google Analytics for. So you can go back and do some reporting that way. And most of it dimensions are available for filtering right now. There are a few that aren't, like user data, user IDs, I should say, but that's going to be probably coming in the future. All right, something to think about for those of you that spend a ton on advertising, or have a huge amount of visitors to your website, or have a whole analytics team. Consider server-side tag management. So For those of you who don't know, a lot of the ways that our clients at Zuri Group and others will use Google Analytics is instead of just dropping the script on their website or their donation platform, they put it in what's called a tag management system. So imagine it to be like a bucket that holds all of your different tracking tags for Google, for Facebook, for Google Ads, for AdRoll, for lots of different things. And instead of having to put each one of those piecemeal on your website, you put it all in the bucket and you just put the bucket on the back end of your website. So it's easier for you to take tags out left and right, to only fire tags on certain pages. It's a very easy thing. But the challenge that we're seeing that you might have heard about is as all these different privacy shifts in the industry have come and new laws and regulations, is you're probably seeing less and less accurate data within your Google Analytics accounts or within your Facebook marketing or Google Ads. And the reason is because of ad blockers and then a big shift in how Apple is passing data through iOS 14. And that's because basically with your website, all the data kind of goes up straight to Google and the ad platforms, and they're just getting blocked by this wall, this ad blocker and iOS 14 wall. So the way around that is we recommend something that's called server-side tag management. What that is you have your website with your tag management container, and you also have a server through AWS or Google Cloud Services or others that's owned by you, is on the same domain as you. And instead of going directly up, you're going to go sideways to your server with that data. And then from your server, you're going to talk directly to Google Analytics and others through their API. And you're going to get much more accurate, much cleaner data that way if everything's set up correctly. There's a bit of a technical hurdle to get this done. The amount of time it takes isn't arduous to do it, and there is going to be a small monthly cost that you'll have to do for the server. But once you have it set up, you should be looking at fairly accurate data going forward, and it's going to make your reporting look a lot better, I think, as you are trying to attribute which conversions came from which ad campaign, or just what kind of visitor traffic you're having on your website. All right, so also kind of branching off of that BigQuery slide that I had, there's also different ways to create dashboards and get better reporting out. So Google has a product called Looker Data Studio. It used to be called Google Data Studio. And it's a great way to produce dashboards and reports using that data. And it can connect natively from GA4. So you can continuously update dashboards and show your data in different ways for folks. And there's lots of integrations with other platforms too. So if you have data coming in from some offline sources, or you have a different platform for your event ticketing that doesn't have Google Analytics on it, then you can pull that in to Looker Studio. The question that we've gotten in the past about this is, does it store data in the? And no, it doesn't. It's pulling data in. So you'll still need to get something like BigQuery if you're looking for hosting all that historical data in the past. So that's one thing to note is don't expect it to be able to get that data if it's eliminated from the sources. Something interesting that I'm really looking forward to testing out more with our clients is predictive analytics and anomaly detection. So they had this type of feature in Universal Analytics. They called it like intelligence reports, I believe. And I didn't really make use of it that much. It's a little bit buried in there, but they're really surfacing this now in a lot of the built-in dashboards within GA4. And I'm hoping that they're going to be building many more of these. So a few examples that caught my eye are purchase probability, churn probability, and revenue prediction. So I think those would be really great to see and compare exactly how accurate that is with Google's giant server banks crunching this data for you versus other things. And then automated insights. So this might help pop up with specific things that might catch your eye or might catch your leadership's team eye. Like, oh, we're seeing a huge spike in donations. What might that be from? Or where are all these videos? Why are all these visitors coming from this news site? Did we have some good PR, some bad PR? And you can add those to lots of different dashboards. And the cool thing about this too is instead of having to think logically or technically when trying to look up where to find something within GA4, you can kind of ask it simple questions and it'll surface those answers for you within the search. So think about all the work that AI has been doing. You could say like, how many visitors did I have to the website in the last 2 months? And without having to go to a report and do the date filtering, it'll just surface that information up for you. So, you know, if you're on a phone call with someone and they ask you, you could bring that up really quick. All right, so we've been talking a lot about Google Analytics 4, but what happens if you need something different or you're a bigger organization, you have lots more regulations or requirements from your board or regulatory bodies or your IT department? So there are a few different solutions out there that we've worked with and are possible alternatives. The first one is Adobe Analytics. You've probably heard of it. They're kind of the big guns in this space a bit. If you use a ton of Adobe products like Adobe Experience Manager or their e-commerce platforms, they have much better integrations there, kind of in the same way that Google has integrations with their platforms. They do really well at pathing analysis, so understanding where, how visitors are moving through your websites, and they have many integrations with other platforms. Unfortunately, the price, you know, if we're going on like the Yelp scale, I'd give it a $4 sign. It's going to be expensive, and I think that the learning curve, especially if you've been a Google Analytics user for many years, is going to be quite arduous. The kind of middle ground here is Google Analytics 360, which is their enterprise version. So this allows you to use more unsampled data versus GA4. So that's, you know, I was talking about aggregating that data up. They allow you to use much more unsampled. There's a common interface with GA4, so less of a learning curve, especially if you've been using Google products for years. And they have a longer data retention period. I think it's something like 50 months, if I'm recalling correctly. So you know, it kind of lessens the need for you to get onto that BigQuery or other data warehouse platform right away, and allows you to do more data processing within Google Analytics. In terms of price, I'd call this a $3 sign price. Another alternative, and there's a few out there, are some independent analytics platforms. The one that we've been looking with a few clients is Piwik Pro or Piwik Enterprise is a different version. So these are really focused on user privacy. Most of them are based in Europe, and they allow you to host your analytics on your own private cloud or your own on-premise server. So you could 100% own that data, which allows you to comply with things like HIPAA or other strict privacy requirements. Because you own all that data, you get unsampled data by default. So you have a big chunk of you know, raw data that you can work with. And in terms of price, I call it a $2 signer. So, you know, during this conversation, we've talked about a lot of different things that's going on with Google Analytics. And this is kind of just the start of a kind of a longer discussion that we'd love to have with everyone about the product because it is such a different beast. So I think I am at the end of my slides, and I wanted to have quite a bit of time for conversation. So thank you all for taking the time, and I'd like to pass it to my coworkers to do some moderation here.
Sure. Thank you, Joe. I have a couple questions in the question box. The first one is, it seems that GA4 is somewhat integrated with Luminate Online under the site options. Should they use that or add the GA script directly to the web page or to the CSS? What's the best approach with Luminate?
For Luminate, probably the best thing is you could use that built-in tool that they have. That's really just for putting the scripts on the pages. But if you're looking for more complex event tracking, purchase conversion tracking, you'll have to add some additional code to the confirmation pages or to the page wrappers, depending on what types of things you want to track. I know Blackbaud's coming out with some more documentation on how to do that, but if you're looking for something set up quicker, it might take a little bit of discovery on your part.
Do you know what, and we can always come back and send this out, what event tracking the standard implementation will give you?
Yeah, out of the box, what they'll offer you is things like scroll tracking, page views. It'll tell you when forms are submitted and what that form name was, but it won't give you a lot more data on that. It'll give you engagement rate, and it can track things like video views. So those are kind of the out of the box ones.
Okay, thank you. I'm at a small nonprofit, not me, the person asking the question. Is that a small nonprofit that uses analytics sparingly to see who's using the website and see how certain campaigns are doing? What's the recommendation to keep this simple and just still kind of get that same level of reporting?
That's a good question. I think at the minimum, what I tell everyone to do is put GA4 across all your websites and your donation platform. And if you can, I'd say the only two conversions that you might want to think about tracking are purchases and email signups. So, if you have a sign up form or if you have it on the bottom of your website in the footer, tracking how that's performing and which pages are the ones that are performing best at. That's data that comes right out of the box with GA4. The other thing, if you haven't been doing it already, is take a look online and research the best methods to use UTM parameters. That's the built-in tracking that Google can do to help identify the source and medium and campaigns. You might be doing this already. This is a perfect time to understand how that's set up in GA4 and to maybe switch your methodology if it's a little out to date.
So Joe, to be the voice of Leah, who asked that question, when you say just do the basic, does that mean go in, use the migration script that Google is offering to migrate your stuff, and then swap out your code blocks, swap out what you have now with the new code block they give you? As simple kind of as that?
Yeah, depending on how long you've had your Universal Analytics code on your website, you might need to swap out the code, you might not. A few years ago, they instituted this new set of JavaScript that is trying to kind of standardize their processes, Google's processes. So like if you're not using the newest one, and it'll tell you within that setup assistant if you need to change it out. But that would be the easiest way to do it. Put it on all your pages, put it on all your systems.
Wrappers, templates, yeah.
Exactly, but I wouldn't change any, I wouldn't remove the old one until after July 1st. Keep all that data flowing into Universal Analytics until July 1st, and then you could just start removing that old UA code if you have it on there.
Okay, great. We have a question from an Engaging Networks user. Is it possible to set up e-commerce donation tracking for Engaging Networks pages? Yeah, set up transaction tracking, e-commerce donation transaction tracking on an Engaging Networks page.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the nice things that Engaging Networks does is they do surface a lot of that transactional data after a donation's made on that confirmation page. Using the code that Google gives you or some more customized things, you can kind of use their merged variables or some other page JSON that's available to write in the different data that you'll need for the parameters. There's a few things to kind of look out for there in terms of how you set it up. Not everything is available until after the donation's made. So if you're looking for like a full donation funnel, you might not be able to get it, and that's where some extra coding might come in. And then once you're on that confirmation page, you need to make sure that that data is able to be surfaced before the purchase event fires, because it needs to make sure that that data is available to be seen So that might involve a little bit of work in terms of if you're using Google Tag Manager, or a little testing to see where on the page you need to put that information.
Can you explain, you mentioned Google Tag Manager. Can you explain that's different than G4?
Yeah, so let's take G4 out of the picture for a second. So Google Tag Manager is a container, a thing that can hold all of your different marketing pixels. So if you've done a lot of advertising, you might have gotten something from your the platform or from an agency that says, hey, put this on your confirmation page so we can track it. Or here's a little piece of code to show a Facebook button or something like that. All sorts of like random scripts. And with a lot of organizations, to modify their website, it's a long process of approvals, or you have to go to the IT department or outside vendor that costs you a lot of money. So what a tag management system does is you just put the container all across your websites and platforms, and then you as the marketing professional or the fundraising professional, all you have to do is go into that container through Google Tag Manager, and you can drop that code in there yourselves without having your developers do it or an outside agency. And then within the container, you can define what's triggering this code. Is it going to go on all pages, or is this purchase conversion tag only going to fire on the confirmation pages of our website? It allows you to more easily manage all of these different marketing pixels and tracking pixels and things. And it's been really helpful for businesses big and small to be able to streamline their processes. The plus side too is all of that code is then hosted by Google. So because Google's hosting it and they've got millions and millions of servers and hosting centers around the world, it makes that code faster. It's not going to bog down your page as much versus putting script after script after script at the top of your page. So having in the platform is a big win.
So they have nothing to really do with each other?
I mean, they're by the same company. You
Right.
would, if you did use Tag Manager, like Google Tag Manager, you'd put your GA4 script in there. You wouldn't put it directly on the page to get the most effectiveness out of it.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. I hope everyone got their curiosity piqued like mine. Obviously, some of these questions, Joe, of course, came straight from my head and not from the question thing, because I'm so curious on the details on this, and I really want to fully understand kind of how all these layers come together, and I'm sure you do too. If you need any help, just reach out to Joe. If you have any questions following this webinar that you just forgot to ask, there's Joe's email. Send him an email. We're happy to answer anything that you need to know. Maybe you need to report up to somebody. Thanks for coming today. We're gonna set you free early. Yeah, come back and feel free to reach out to Molly at Zuri Group as well if you need anything. Thanks for attending.
Thanks everyone, have a good day.